Okay, so good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. This webinar entitled Developing a Secured IoT Smart City Framework for a Better Digital Future is a local online event organized in the scope of the EU Industry Week 2021, a flagship event of the European Commission, and is promoted by the MSEC project, an R&D EU-Japan collaborative project. The session will be recorded and publicly disseminated in MSEC's YouTube channel, website, and also in our social media networks. The slides presented will be made available to you after the webinar, as we will send to all registered participants a follow-up email. But before we start, just some technical recommendations. So we ask you to please rename yourself to first, last name, and entity you represent, so it will be easier for us to identify you during Q&A. There will also be a specific slot dedicated to Q&A after each speaker's presentation. So if you wish to ask a question, just use the Q&A function and not the chat function to do so. So the moderator, which will be me, will go through the questions in the Q&A function, and our speakers will then have the chance to answer the questions asked, provided there is enough time. But if due to lack of time, your question is not answered live, our speakers will answer it in writing through the Q&A function. So here is the agenda for today's webinar. So I will start by presenting the conclusions of a survey we have done in the scope of the project regarding security and privacy aspects. And I will also ask you to fill in a short survey on these topics so that we can see if there are some interesting conclusions to take. I will then give the floor to Vanessa Clemente from Wordline, who will briefly present the main challenges in privacy and security of IoT smart city applications and explain the need for such a solution such as MSEC. Afterwards, Antonis Litke from the Institute of Communications and Computer Systems of the National Technical University of Athens will take the floor and present MSEC's progress in the middleware security layer in a smart city context, so that you get acquainted with the main features of the MSEC solution and why we believe it can ensure a more secure and thus less vulnerable data transfer between stakeholders when using IoT devices and applications in hyper-connected smart cities. We will then have the intervention of Aamir Bokhari from Yokohama National University in Japan, to give us a little bit more detail on data security and privacy approach in the MSEC solution. And finally, before the main conclusions by all speakers, Vanessa Clemente will present some interesting use cases that showcase the applicability of the MSEC solution on real smart city scenarios. So my name is Nadine Teles, and I am EU Projects Manager at F6S Network Limited, a global founders community, one of the partners of the MSEC project. So MSEC is an R&D EU-Japan collaborative project. Its main goal is to develop this innovative solution that ensures a more secure and thus less vulnerable data transfer between stakeholders when these use IoT devices and applications, namely in a smart city context. And in the scope of this research, our MSEC project is now conducting a survey to all EU and Japanese citizens and stakeholders that are considered as potential users of the MSEC solution. And our objective with this survey is twofold, is to collect feedback on their experience when using IoT devices and applications and also on their knowledge on EU or Japanese data protection regulations. So the main goal is to help the project better understand the IoT ecosystem in which MSEC is expected to operate, what are people's IoT habits, and also their awareness regarding data protection regulation. So far, the survey we had was answered by more or less 250 people. So here is a short overview of the main results that we had so far. Respondents are mainly citizens, employees in private companies, or researchers, but we also have a good representation of IoT developers and municipal officers. Regarding IoT devices that people most commonly use, more than 50% of respondents seem to use health devices, such as, for instance, fitness bracelets. And these are followed by home devices and appliances, such as smart TVs, smart door locks, and also by voice assistants, such as Alexa or Siri. Also, 30% of our respondents seem to use IoT devices every day, all day. And here we are, for obvious reasons, excluding the use of smartphones in order to not have a biased sample. So these refer to the use of the previous IoT devices that I just described. However, most people, we are talking about 53% of our respondents, are not fully aware of security and privacy data protection policies of those IoT devices that they use, meaning that they normally don't read carefully these policies when they start using the device, or when the policy terms of that particular device are updated. So when confronted with the scenario in which a given IoT device that they are using might suffer a cyber attack, 47% of them just say that they stop using that particular device, while 43% say that they actually go and at that particular time would look at the policies, the data protection policies more carefully to learn their rights. Regarding the main privacy and security concerns that people seem to have when confronted with these potential cyber attacks, they say that these are related with the use of data by others, but also with the theft of personal data. And finally, most respondents, so 88%, are not aware of the current IoT smart city solutions that are deployed in the city they live. So those who are aware point some interesting solutions, such as smart city traffic lights, smart garbage collection, smart parking, smart transportation. So things that are already being implemented in the cities that they live. And finally, if we focus on the citizens' awareness regarding EU or Japanese data protection regulation, in the EU, 46% of our respondents say that they are aware of their rights regarding GDPR regulation, while 44% are not completely aware, but have heard about this regulation. So they know that it exists, that protects them, their data somehow, but are not completely aware of what it entails. While in Japan, the API regulation still needs further discussion and communication, perhaps, since there is a lower rate of awareness. Therefore, we would be delighted if all of you participating here today could take this survey. So it will not take you more than 1 minute to take this survey that we have, and we will send it when we will send you the follow-up email. So we very appreciate and would be grateful if you could take just 1 minute of your day to fill in the survey and help us understand the IoT main habits and the awareness regarding data protection regulation of our citizens. Meanwhile, I just wanted to do a small survey to kick off this webinar. And to see if, for instance, the answers of our participants match the key findings that we currently have. So I will start by launching a pool with this question. So I will start. So I believe that now you are able to see the question. So we would like to ask you about your main IoT habits. So which kind of IoT device do you commonly use? Okay, just giving you a little bit of time so that we can have all answers. Okay, I will close the pool now and I will show you the results. So it seems that a lot of you use smartwatches. So this is very trendy right now, smartwatches, as opposed to being a complement of our smartphones, then followed by home devices and home appliances. So everyone more or less seems to be using some kind of a smart device apart from the smartphone. And this more or less is according to the data that we have from our survey, even though smartwatches here seem to be the trend. So thank you so much. I will now launch another pool, which is our next question. So how often do you use these IoT devices? So how often do you use the smartwatch or the home appliance or the health device? Just giving a couple of seconds so that you can all answer. So please note that here we are referring to the previous question, and for instance, not the use of your smartphone, for instance. Okay, I will now close the pool and share with you the results. So this is, so not every day, all day, at least for 33% of you, but the majority more or less uses it every day, once or twice a day. Namely, if we perhaps are speaking about home devices or health devices, but perhaps if we are speaking about smartwatches, we can consider that it's all day with the notifications and things like that. But a lot of people don't use them regularly. So this is an interesting data also. So thank you so much. So now to our next question, which will be this one. I'm sorry, I'm not allowing our speakers to vote, but now you can vote as well. So our focus now is regarding your awareness in terms of data protection regulation. So are you aware of data protection policies when you are using your smartwatch, your home appliance, your health device? So a couple of questions coming in. Okay, I will now close the pool and share with you the results. So it seems that the majority of you, it's not fully aware. And normally it's because the majority of us tend to just tick the box where it says that we all read the data protection policies or the regulation policies of that particular device, because you just want to move forward with the installation of that device or that particular app. So this means that the majority of you, me included, let's say, shouldn't take a little extra time just to read a couple of articles, just so that we are aware of our rights regarding the use of that particular device and the use of our data by that particular device. And so now, almost in our final set of questions. So now, if you were confronted with a cyber attack, for instance, in your smartwatch, what option would you choose? Would you then go and read carefully the data protection policy of that company producing the smartwatch, and then try to confront them with your rights to make sure that your data was secure? Or would you just stop using that particular IoT device? Okay, we are now very close to the more than half of you have answered, so I will close this poll and I will share the results. So it seems that the majority of you would then go and try to read carefully the data protection policies that sometimes we tend to forget when we install or download a particular IoT device and app, which is it's quite the same type of answers that we have received so far for our survey. So more or less, people go for both things. Read the data protection policies, but at the same time, perhaps for during a specific time, just stop using that particular IoT device while they are not completely 100% sure that everything is back on track regarding the cyber attack. And then now to our final question, before I pass on to our next speaker. So what are your security and privacy concerns when using these devices? So do you have any concern regarding your personal data? So the data that you need to have, sometimes it's mandatory to be able to use these IoT devices in the best possible way. Okay, a couple of answers now coming in. Let's just wait a few more seconds. Okay, I will now close the poll and we'll share with you the results. So the majority of you, such as our respondents in our MSEC survey, also feel that the theft of personal data is a major concern, and also the use of data by others. So these are quite the same as our respondents in our survey, even though mistrust in the results, ownership of the data, and also difficulties in the use of the device, not that very much related with data itself, with the data of the user. But of course, these are all main concerns when we are using such devices. Okay, so thank you so much for this, and I do hope that you take the time to take our survey and be part of this consultation that we are doing today, IoT community. So I will now give the floor to Vanessa Clemente. Vanessa Clemente is business developer and project manager at Wordline in Spain. She is also the coordinator of the MSEC project. So Vanessa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nadine. So in the next slides, I'm gonna give you an overview of the main challenge in privacy and data security on the ecosystem of IoT smart city applications. So starting, please, next slide. Okay, so a great deal of state-of-art of IoT systems in smart cities tends to be built around the concept of IoT cloud convergence, which foresees the integration of heterogeneous data streamings within one or more cloud infrastructures, enabling IoT systems to benefit from the scalability and the performance and the capacity of the cloud. And nevertheless, these architectures promote a centralized data collection and a processing approach, which introduce several limitations. For instance, the inefficient in handling, actuation, and control over sensors on physical devices. They also complete some failures since they dispose with centralized control by a limited number of administrative entities. And they tend to be also inflexible in the incorporation of innovative applications and new business model ideas. If we go to the next slide, we have to say that in modern smart city applications, there is also the need of providing an end-to-end security, which is actually one of the main motivations of MSEC, to provide this end-to-end security framework to protect data from all the different layers, since from the IoT device level to the cloud level to the application level, to protect and to avoid any malicious action, and especially on those applications or use cases where data source may contain also sensitive information that can raise issues on privacy and data protection. For instance, many smart city applications are actually utilizing data streams such as image from cameras or mobile applications, and these streams also should be protected, not only sensitive personal data, but data collected through these smart city IoT sensors to prevent it and protect it from the attackers. That's the main motivation of MSEC. To avoid all these different types of attacks from physical devices, like civil attacks or node failure, to the connectivity, like man-in-the-middle interception, to data accumulation, ensuring confidentiality and integrity of all the data collected, data abstraction, to avoid also some of the main typical attacks like replay attack or account list attack, and to the application to avoid unauthorized access to the application and manipulation of sensitive data. So if we go to the next slide, I would like to provide a few insights about the IoT security market. According to the IoT analytics reports, most of the breaches are caused by malware, which represents 24%, but it's followed also by human factor, man in the middle, which it's 22%, and brute force representing 18%, and denial of service 15%. These are the main common IoT breaches, at least in the report that it's analyzed data between 2015 and 2017. And if we go to the next slide, okay, another interesting aspect covered in the report of the IoT analytics is about the importance of IoT security in smart cities. Smart cities is actually one of the fastest growing segments for IoT security. And a key challenge for IoT towards smart city applications is ensuring actually the reliability and incorporating also the issues of ethics, security, robustness, and flexibility to rapidly change environmental conditions. And without guarantees that the interconnect objects are accurately sensing the environment, and are exchanging the data and information in a secure way, users are actually reluctant to adopt these kinds of solutions. In 2017, about 49 millions of USD were spent on IoT security in smart cities. And this number is actually, as you can see in the graphic, is expected to grow 10 times to $435 million in just 5 years. One of the dominant trends is increased automation of IoT security tasks. For instance, advanced anomaly detection, building also sophisticated machine learning algorithms. So it's important to understand and know that this type of trend is actually growing every time more and more to protect this security and to boost also smart city applications, and also the adoption by the end users of these applications. If we go to the next slide, we have here some news published in different papers, just to give you an overview of how interesting is the topic of providing security in transforming market as it is the IoT Smart City Security. For instance, Bloomberg published that the smart cities need to spend more on security tech, and studies suggest. Also, Glove Newsware says that the smart city platform market is expected to register a CAGR of 18%. And then we have other news regarding the lack of critical infrastructure cybersecurity investments in smart cities. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you a little bit more of overview of MSEC and our motivations, our mission is mainly based in developing this end-to-end secure IoT platform, which we'll explain a little bit further on the later slides, to secure IoT platforms and to provide the stakeholders with a framework where they can build innovative smart city applications on top of it, creating and enabling liquid markets and profitable business models for IoT stakeholders. And our vision is mainly laying in the foundation for the adoption and creation of new IoT security standards and mechanisms that can give more and can guarantee and ensure data protection, integrity, reliability of all the data sets collected through the application and deployment of different IoT sensors. Okay, so this is a main overview on the main security challenge in the smart city.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. But before we give the floor to Antonis, let's see if there are any questions for Vanessa. So let's just take a couple of minutes so you can ask your questions here in the Q&A function. I don't see any questions. Okay, so there is here one question, but it's only at the end. So if there are no further questions for now, let's then move on to our next speaker, Antonis Litke. So Antonis Litke is a senior researcher engineer at ICCS, the Institute of Communications and Computer Systems at the National Technical University of Athens in Greece. And ICCS is also one of the partners of the MSEC project from the EU side. So Anthony, thank you so much for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. So, okay. Yes, my colleague Vanessa gave a brief introduction on the vision of the MSEC project. So MSEC is a project which now it's in the final year of the 3 years of its duration. So it has already some mature results where we are happy to show today and inspire further discussion that is needed. The project is going to end in September. So some of the main achievements where you also can refer to, if you would like to have some more information on how MSEC is addressing different topics of Internet of Things security. Some of the results are the elicitation of the requirements, where we have a very broad spectrum of different requirements already identified. And let's say blueprint architecture following, let's say, some of the best practices and principles as far as it concerns the Internet of Things security and how we can architect those kind of solutions. Prototypes, of course, a lot of prototypes that have been developed are brought by the partners. And at the same time, we had also the challenge of bringing them together, integrating them together into something which can bring a value in what we call the hyper-connected smart city of the future, enriching, of course, all the necessary security primitives that we would like to have. And so this final integration is still on its final way in order to support the different pilots and the different use cases, as these are going to be further detailed by my colleague Vanessa. So what we have as a common reference, let's say, for the whole, this big picture is actually more or less a layered approach where we try to bring the gap between the different services we would like to implement or the different smart cities we would like to offer to the end users, to the citizens, across the whole, let's say, distance from the service to the sensor itself. So this layered approach, we would like to have different sources of information so that we can provide the meaningful services and try to close this gap through middleware components, so middleware services we would like to bring into life, and to consider also how the security can be part of this big picture and how we can secure the communication across all these big distance from the data sources, whether they are Internet of Things devices, but also, as already identified, smart watches, smartphones, even sources from the web. So this is the big challenge that we had to face, and how we can try to provide a solution which can close this gap. So as said, one of the major results of the project is the MSEC architecture. We will not go into big detail here, as you can understand, because it's very complicated. In a similar way, we have followed a layered approach so that we go from the Internet of Things layer through the middleware layer, the cloud layer, and also the application, the end services we are going to provide to the citizens, to the users, and across all these vertical aspects for manageability, or if you prefer, end-to-end security features that have to do with authentication or how we can manage security. But an important aspect where we tried to focus on is when we try to define this end-to-end security part, is also in this middleware approach. So here is also where we are going to provide today some further details so that we inspire the discussion about the Internet of Things security and how it can be achieved also as far as it concerns the middleware level that is part of it. And here, as you can see, as a set of middleware services, we have platforms that provide a secure data access to the different Internet of Things devices which are in the lower layer. Also, we have, let's say, associated a blockchain related infrastructure that that plans to increase the level of trust and the transparency of the different data exchange, and as well as the trust and reputation model, where we try here through these modules to try to enhance security features that have to do with the whole spectrum of layers as we can see them here. So different features that have to do, for instance, with a secure SOX fire, which is a platform brought by Keio University in Japan. That, just to give an example here, the plan is to, let's say, provide an interface for data collection, data streams across different sources, like for instance, open data sources or sensing IoT devices or people as a sensor through the mobile devices. And through this publish subscribe mode middleware level to try to capture this input across different servers that we apply on the cloud and try to provide also original value, unique visual analytics, for instance, or services that are at the end for the benefit of the citizens and for the city officials. So just to give an example here of this platform, which is already available, for instance, provided by the Keio University, and how it can be combined for the different use cases as they are going to be explained later on by my colleague Vanessa. And here the challenge was, of course, to try to, as you've seen in this big architecture, to have this middleware level and combine it also, for instance, with the blockchain infrastructure we were building. The blockchain platform that was chosen was Quorum because it has a lot of features, like it's a permissioned blockchain based on Ethereum, so we can have also a lot of features from the big open source community of Ethereum blockchain. It has increased features of privacy, because the smart contract privacy is of high importance here. Both private and public smart contracts are validated by every node. So different things that have to do with transparency and privacy are of high importance for the project. And so this is where our blockchain implementation was positioned. On top of that, on top of our blockchain implementation, we created also the MSEC token. Why? Because as we are going to see later on, it's a part of sharing and changing value between the different actors in these value chains, and in order to support particular use cases, as we're going to see later on. So the specific MSEC token was implemented in Solidity programming language. This was, again, something beneficial for the project because it follows the best practices that are there with respect to the ERC20 token standard and the different, let's say, methods that someone can use, but about the supply of the token, the balance of the token, transfer methods and APIs, and a lot of features we can use by using not something which is totally custom-based for the MSEC, but also can be further extended as the project at the end is going to roll out. And here, based on the different, let's say, IoT devices and services we would like to offer, there was the need to build also what we call the marketplace. So a decentralized application based on blockchain for sharing this Internet of Things sensors data, as you can see. So they are being captured, they can be further used, for instance, or whatever, but there was a need further on to try to build and further exploit the specific data. This is why we had also the particular ERC20 token. Can we actually utilize them and create value and share them and exchange value based on the specific data? And here, the implementation was based on Node-RED workflow enactment engine, smart contracts, different smart contracts that have to do, for instance, well, not only about the MSEC token as explained earlier, but also smart contracts that have to do on managing the sensors, and the different smart city data smart contracts that had to do with how you can capture actually the specific feedback from the data streams and how you can further exploit data as these are being captured and shared in this overall marketplace. And the IoT marketplace was finally implemented, and having all those different smart contracts deployed along with the Alastria node, the Alastria infrastructure, which is supported by the Spanish government, a big consortium of actually permissioned blockchains and implementations that can be part of a production level blockchain infrastructure. And of course, as far as it concerns what we call here this integration part, you can see it was a very big challenge to try to consolidate everything together, so that from one side have the big security software infrastructure, which creates these data sources and tries to capture the data, provide them into the whole MSEC platform, and at the same time on those middleware level have services like the registration of sensors in all this big part, how you can define particular application level features about the purchase, exchange of data, on how you can use the whole integration loop for visualizing the data through the bridging of the visual analytics on one side that can be provided by the secure Soxfire, but also on the marketplace we would like to have with additional services that can enable the specific share of data. Not only that, different middleware services that have been built, like for instance, know your customer services, where, as you can understand, it's a particular process that has to do with when a business would like to verify the identity of its clients. Why? Because at the end we are sharing value. So KYC, know your customer processes, best practices was something that we would like to have here, and we understood that it's a common practice. It's something that has at the end to be implemented in an automated way, because otherwise you cannot make it the Internet of Things sharing of data a reality. So given that, additional features that were implemented, particular custom-made flows, custom-made architectural aspects that have to do, for instance, how we can automate this, how we can actually have a process where different KYC documents, like the identity and so on, everything that has to be done for verifying a specific customer has to be implemented in a custom process, but at the same time to have means that will increase the privacy and anonymity of users who would like to be part of the blockchain. So to that end, we have investigated further solutions that have, let's say, off-chain storage of different data that are sensitive, that would require a further anonymity and have it overall stored there, but at the same time allow the user through this validation to have access on the different other services and enable the blockchain itself to check whether the specific user is still valid while he is being interacting with the MSEC system. And lately, we have also focused also on different trust and reputation models and simulation activities that have to do, as you have seen also in the big architectural view over there, on how we increase also the levels of trust through transactions, through different, let's say, modes of interaction between the device themselves, the humans in this big picture, and to try to find ways where the specific trust models can be defined and can be somehow encoded into this overall picture. Here you can see some further interfaces of what I explained earlier on, like for instance the Node-RED flows of different application services we have provided and how we can wire them together in order to have the specific functionalities and additional views of data sensors being integrated and exchanging data on top of the blockchain. The project has not finished yet. There are some ongoing work to be done. Of course, further expansion of the different IoT marketplaces and the whole middleware services I've explained earlier, and develop new smart contracts, for instance, for further assets we would like to share, for instance, in this big picture, while at the same time extend different features of the blockchain implementation itself that has to do with privacy, increased levels of cryptography, or at the same time allow different, let's say, levels of trust and security as far as it concerns the private transactions we would like to have. And as far as it concerns, for instance, the trust and reputation part, so that to increase also the features of the platform that have to do that the operators of registered sensors who bring these IoT devices, because we've seen it also, it was part of the questions, or those people who are going at the end to bring their IoT devices in such a big picture, to be equipped also with mechanisms that would highlight the trust and reputation levels between providers of IoT devices, providers of data streams, and consumers of the specific data. Further research activities that we are also considering, because part of our research, let's say, scope, we would like to further investigate, is also proof of location mechanisms, for instance, where you can use smartphones and define ways where also the location, because at the end, Internet of Things, devices, sensors are of high importance when they are associated with location-based services. And so how we can, for instance, define ways and mechanisms where also the proof of location of presence of a particular IoT device can have a significant value and can be proven with particular services that are being built, as here, for instance, in MSEC, on top of blockchains. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much, Anthony. So I will ask our participants to ask their questions here in our Q&A function. Let's wait a couple of seconds to see if we got any questions. Okay, we have one.
Yes. The question is about the blockchain storing of data, how we can query those data. Of course, it's not easy to do, let's say, query on stored data on blockchain. For this reason, data that we would like to query, this is why we said that we have also an additional companion DB. We have also off-chain data, so that when it is, let's say, a very data-specific query we would like to have direct access to a specific database. On blockchain itself, we try to have data stored that will actually can guarantee the levels of transparency between the different transactions. Of course, usage of token exchange, it should be there. But at the same time, it was something that I didn't say because we don't have a lot of time. We are investigating also ways of how we can have mechanisms that allow blockchain representation into, for instance, graph databases, where there we can have an additional flexibility of querying the specific data and be more efficient in that sense.
Okay, we have a second one.
Thank you, Tom. Who owns this kind of solution within a smart city, and who is responsible for maintenance and further development? Yes, so what is also the case with the pilots we have in MSEC is that this is why we have the city authorities of the different smart cities. They are part of the consortium. So typically, the big picture would go like this. Of course, in the context of smart city, there is a need for the municipal authorities to have a leading role. But if you see what we're trying to do to provide this open architecture is to provide it in such a way that, for instance, any kind of vendor or citizen who would like to create services, to create data streams from his own Internet of Things infrastructure, to be able to be in such a way plugged into this kind of system. So typically, there should be someone who can ensure that the presence of the specific Internet of Things infrastructure and somehow maintain things. But what we did is an open architecture which can be, which is extensible, which can be further rolled out and include additional stakeholders as data providers or data consumers.
Thank you so much, Antonis. I don't see any more questions.
Thank you very much.
But if more questions appear, you can answer by writing or at the end in our conclusions part. Thank you so much. So now, forward, yes. So our next speaker is Aamir Bokhari. So Aamir Bokhari works on information security at the Yokohama National University in Japan. And the university is one of the partners of the MSEC project from the Japanese side. So Aamir, thank you so much for joining us today as well. And the floor is yours. Aamir, are you there?
Hello.
Okay,
Sorry.
now here you.
Yeah, I was trying to talk and just realized that my remote control request basically took the mic away from me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time and thanks for joining this webinar. As Nadine mentioned, I am the information security lead here on this project from Yokohama National University. And I will be providing you more insight into how we at MSEC is approaching the data security and privacy to address the concerns that you all shared in the survey as well as in the Zoom survey that just did. I have over 20 years of experience both at user side and manufacturing side, a wide global experience that actually helps me to put and address different scenarios and concerns from different stakeholders' point of view. So let me walk you through how do we address okay. For some reason, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can, Aamir.
Oh, I'm not able to control the slides. Can you move the slides? For some reason, I'm not able to go to the next slide.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, so sorry for the delay. I'm just going to highlight one key thing in the smart purposes. As you know that in the recent years, a lot of migration has happened from rural areas into urban areas, and more people are converging onto cities, and cities are expanding on a very rapid base. At the same time, the smart cities or the future cities basically need to address not only the overflux of the incoming inhabitants, but also at the same time providing them the improved city services and the living experience of residents in such a way that it addresses not only the on-hand concerns, but also the future concerns such as traffic congestions and energy usage and air quality. So in order to provide that, most of the companies in the world and most of the technologies in the world are using the digital technology to address those needs. And when we use those digital technologies to implement smart cities services, there will be a huge influx of data that needs to be sorted, analyzed, and processed. So the ICT solutions that basically get introduced in the smart cities need to be very vigilant in case of next click, please, in order to provide a confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data that is being consumed throughout the smart city. Next, please. All right. So looking into the drivers for security enhancement, as I mentioned, that the IoT devices and the technology is being used to address the population needs and the smart living needs. According to a survey from International Data Corporation, they have forecasted that there will be more than 41 billion devices connected, IoT devices connected by year 2025. And as the number of IoT devices grows, so will be the number of IoT data available on those devices. What this means is, from security point of view, is that there will be a huge focus of attackers in trying to intercept or trying to compromise those data for their own use. We have already seen a high number of ransomware attacks. We have also seen a number of breaches that are becoming a norm in our newspapers and our daily lives. Most of these things are because of the poor security practices or because of the weaknesses. So the bad guys, they basically focus on extracting the data at the minimum time that they can spend. It's just like a thief who is trying to get into your home to get some of your crown jewels or your jewelry or the prize that he wants to get, and as quickly as possible get away from it. So these surveys, these trends have actually shown that with the increase in the IoT devices, the increase in the number of IoT attacks is also increasing. In a survey or statistics collected in 2018 had seen more than 200% of the increase in the rise of the attacks, over 30 million IoT attacks. So because of all this trend, obviously the regulation governments and the regulations and committees and the standard committees, they are all trying to address the solution, trying to standardize and trying to make sure that all the best practices are in place, both from security and privacy point of view, in order to protect the data. Various regulations such as GDPR has been introduced, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar of those things. But like in the survey, most of us, we don't go and read in detail, so we are not sure too much about what and how the things are being protected. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure in MSEC is also that we look at the human or end user psychology and make sure that we provide as many hurdles as possible for the bad guys to steal the data or the personal information that they are after. New emerging technologies, as one of my colleagues mentioned, we are using artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain. Antonis just explained you about the blockchain as well. So the whole point was that we take advantage of the new emerging technologies and provide the MSEC solution in such a way that it can protect end-to-end the IoT applications as well. Next slide, please. So our approach to security was, the main goal was to enable smart choices based on trust. Putting myself, I will not be easy to, or I will not be relaxed to actually do a business with some place or at some place where I have problem in the trust, or I'm not sure whether the transactions can be carried out safely or not. If I want to put some money or some of my business in a bank, I would definitely want to know what kind of security systems they have. The better it is, and it makes me more easier to conduct business with them. So keeping in that, we looked at all the components of the MSEC architecture, and we looked at different techniques, methods, designs, and operating principles to see how we can minimize the risk of exploiting any of the vulnerabilities or any of the things that hackers are after, and including privacy as well. So we did a thorough threat and risk assessment on all the components, on all the layers, and the whole objective was to mitigate security and privacy vulnerabilities using multiple layers of security, which is consisting of both innovative and proven security technologies. Next slide, please. So just to give you an example, I'm going to just show you a couple of examples as we go forward. With respect to threat assessments, let's take example of IoT layer. That's the entry point. Most of the data is being sniffed raw or is getting through the sensors, through the different IoT devices, which are spread all across, in your home as well as in your cities and everywhere else. So the whole idea was to look at what are the threat vectors according to the research and practices, and also the experience that have taught us. The entry points or the weaker points have been identified, like interfaces. It's very easy to get into the interface or try to exploit through the interface. Authentication, authorization are often used for privilege escalation attacks. Most of the time, we don't change passwords, and the bad guys, they basically know the psychology, and this is why you see ransomware attacks still happening despite of so much security and all that, because they use the human weakness. They use the human psychology to bypass and able to get into the services or interrupt into the services. Data is their utmost target, so we want to make sure that the data is secure, both at rest and motion. Most of the time, data is either secured through a weak encryption or not at all, no encryption at all. Similarly, we have also noticed that the security features on most of the IoT devices were insufficient. Same was the case with the firmware software updates, on non-patched or non-encrypted firmware or software is very easy to get into. Physical security was another issue, because IoT devices, wearable devices, are very small, so it's very easy to remove the storage from them. Privacy definitely is one of the big concerns. So we looked at all the threat vectors, keeping in view the IoT or entrance devices, and we did the same exercise on different layers. For example, let's look at the risk in the cloud layer. Next slide, please. So the risks in the cloud layer, data security, obviously, you cloud service providers, you don't have the visibility into them. You don't know exactly how they are doing, what they're doing. Your data goes into the cloud provider, and you hope to trust. But then you hear the news about breaches and misconfigurations and different issues. Same is the case with data privacy. So our approach has been that data is your responsibility. So we should not be trusting the third parties that they will be protecting the data. So we want to make sure that anonymization and retention of the data is thoroughly looked into. Data availability, obviously without data, the whole exercise is of no use. So we want to make sure that not only we know where the data is, but we should also have a recovery and long-term storage kind of things as well. These are the challenges that we looked at. Data integrity and portability, again, the same thing. And the compliance violations, GDPR, all these things. So if a data is lost, or if someone's personal data is lost or breached, it's going to be the data provider's responsibility and all the regulations basically will penalize those providers as well. So next slide, please. So looking into the threats and risks on different layers, let me give you an example of IoT security layer. So what we learned through our experience in research, and then we implemented in MSEC platform, is that we need to have multiple layers of security that can cover confidentiality, integrity, availability, and privacy of the data. And in order to do that, we also want to make sure that existing solutions as well as new solutions, they both should be able to operate within the MSEC framework. So that's why we have a hardware and software-based security options, depending on which way you want to go. Similarly, we looked at both external and internal security. We embedded multiple security layers, hardening in order to reduce the threat surface. physical layer, logical layers, processing, how the data transacts, authentication layer. That's also one of the key things that we want to make sure that the IoT devices are not compromised or rogue agents are not introduced. Encryption, definitely, we want to protect the data. We also looked at the perimeter defense and the threat monitoring. And one of the another interesting innovative feature was the privacy by design layer, where we actually, I'll go over it in the next slide, where we actually came up with a nice way of eliminating privacy issues from the data or images that are collected through cameras. Next slide, please. So my colleagues mentioned and talked about blockchain, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but the whole idea was that the secured and trusted storage should be enabled both at the crypto companion database as well as the blockchain. And encryption is going to be the main key for that. Next slide, please. So from encryption, definitely one of the major issues every organization have is to manage the security keys, to manage the security across all the layers. So for that purpose, we have a security management solution in MSEC as well that basically looks at the IoT devices and make sure that only the authorized IoT devices are allowed to connect. Same is the case with making sure that data is encrypted through the cloud and the data is secured. When it goes to blockchain, we want to make sure the security is there as well using directory capabilities and then the application as well. So in this way, what we are trying to do is we are trying to manage security so that we have a complete overview of security. Next slide, please. So not only the security, so this is what I was talking about a while ago, privacy by design. So Keio University came up with this solution they call Gananimizer, which basically, so they have an application, and my colleague Vanessa is going to go over the use case of this scenario. But briefly, what this does is that it has a camera that collects images, as you can see in the waste collection, the third one, where they are calculating the number of garbage coming, and that's one of the requirement for a municipal committee here in Japan, where they wanted to understand how much garbage they need to dispose. So in order to measure the garbage being collected, the personal data, the face of the people, the cars at the background and all those personally identifiable information was also being collected. And the solution was that they came up with a customized solution where they created a hardware and a software solution using a deep learning on the edge computing device that basically enables to remove the personal information or the faces or the people or the cars from the street so that you can actually focus on the actual data. And that data then gets transferred into the system. So we don't have any personal privacy issues because the privacy related information has been deleted or anonymized right at the source. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so just to sum up the whole thing, end-to-end security. So I talked about the security IoT and this gateway layer, that's the IoT layer. So we have ensured that we provide security through auditing to making sure that attestation and anonymization is there, along with when it goes to the cloud before that, the authorization. And then we also have an accounting and authentication process. So from end device, from IoT device, all the way to the user application, we are making sure that we provide all the security means with the like remote attestation platform in the auditing side and the TPM and the perimeter defense, secure management. Similarly, for the anonymization, we have image privacy, which removes the personal data in the streaming that I just explained. We also want to monitor the threat monitoring and the health check of the security IoT devices outside. Same is the case with encryption. We want to make sure that the data that is being stored or is being transported is all fully secured and is properly secured with the help of Security Manager and the encryption. On the application side, we also have introduced the Security Analysis Tool Framework and a Model System Transition Analyzer. Both of these tools basically help in making sure that the application's vulnerability and the design is taken care of right at the beginning rather than at the end of the application being launched. Having said that, let's go to the last slide. I know that there is a lot of information on this one, but we have already done other MSEC webinars which basically go in detail on each layer. And I will recommend you to take your time out if you want to know more in detail. They are available on MSEC YouTube channel. That's all from my side. Thank you so much. Back to you, Nadine.
Thank you so much, Aamir. And now, just before I pass the word to Vanessa, let me just see if we have some Q&A for Aamir. And if not, perhaps you are still thinking on some interesting questions to Aamir or to our other speakers. If this is the case, please let us know in the Q&A function. And then during the conclusions part, we can then go through the questions that remain. Okay, I think that your presentation was quite clear, Aamir. I see no questions here in the Q&A function. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. So I will now give the floor back to Vanessa for the final presentation of this webinar. So Vanessa, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nadine. So thanks to my colleagues, Antonis and Aamir, to explain our approach for securing data sets in each of the layers from the IoT ecosystem, and also explaining our MSEC framework, end-to-end framework. So now we come with the explanation of how we will validate our infrastructure developed during the past, during more than 2 years, since we are approaching the last months of the project. And the infrastructure, actually, if we go to the next slide, it will be validated with real-life use cases scenarios in 2 cities. First one, Fujisawa in Japan. Fujisawa, just to give you a little bit of context, is located in the central part of Kanagawa in Japan. And the city, has participated in many projects foresting the smart city strategy. Actually, it's a pioneer in citizen wellness tech, natural disaster protection, and sustainable energy. And it stands out as one of Japan's most innovative cities. So it's a perfect candidate to test our infrastructure. Also, we have another city where we'll test our use cases, which is Santander. Santander is located in the north coast of Spain. And also in the recent years, it has moved into the vanguard of smart cities through the improvement of their public services and also the development of citizen-oriented policies and the stimulation of new business models for productivity. So if we go to the next slide, we have 5 different use cases defined to be implemented. Actually, most of the use cases have been already initiated its first phase of the pilot running since last September. From these 5 use cases, we have 2 different use cases which are only implemented in Santander city in Spain. Then we have 1 use case implemented in Fujisawa. And since it's a cross-border project, a collaborative project between Europe and Japan, we also have 2 different use cases which are implemented in a cross-border level at the same time in both cities. So let's go to give you an overview of the different use cases. Please, if we move to the next slide. We have the first use case, which is the secure IoT device to enrich strolls across smart city parks. This use case is about the deployment of different IoT devices, such as sensors that can measure noise or CO2 levels, but also we have deployed counting devices that can provide relevant information about overcrowding in selected areas through the sketching of heat maps. This is very relevant if we take into account the current pandemic situation, where we try to keep social distance and to avoid crowd places. So this counting device provides this information. All these devices are specifically deployed in specific areas of a park called Las Llamas in Santander. And all the data collected through these sensors is fed in a park guide application that we have developed within the project frame for the purpose to allow citizens and visitors to obtain information that can enrich this park strolling experience, but also to allow municipality officers to monitor closely these spots and perform and analyze and conduct different evaluations that can give and take effective actions and decisions based on the knowledge and alerts obtained from these sensors. However, this kind of use case and following the approach of data security, it involves to offer reliable data related with the overall environmental status and occupancy in specific areas of the parks. This data could be used by attackers to tweak, for example, the values registered by these sensors. And as a consequence, could lead to erroneous actions from citizens or even from the municipality side. So therefore, data security and integrity is actually the main issue on the applicability and scalability of this solution. The main MSEC benefit, and thanks to our end-to-end IoT framework developed, what we provide to this use case, among other components, but just to highlight, because let's say, the main components that provides data reliability on this use case, is novel hardware security features implemented, which prevents actually IoT devices from these sensors from external attacks. And also we introduce blockchain techniques that contribute to foster the participation of end users and improve the system effectiveness. Also, we include a secure element that handles the integrity of these sensors deployed during the boot process, and also the identification and encryption of all the external communication channels. This is all about use case 1. If we go to use case 2, which is also deployed in the Santander city. So if we move to the next slide, we find the home monitoring security system for aging people. This use case actually intends to face the main challenge of the rapid increase of elderly population during the past years, mainly caused by the increase of life expectancy due to the medical, social and economic advances. Aging people actually may feel isolated due to the lack of close family ties or the result of even living alone. And also these aging people could feel in a constant fear of failing or becoming unwell without being detected or helped by others for a long time. So following this, the consortium provides a solution that covers some of these issues related to the well-being and safety at home. Through the deployment of different sensors like bed occupancy sensor or window or door open sensor, or even smart plugs that are connected, for example, to a TV appliance or a coffee machine, we can collect different data that can be transferred to a web portal for teleassistance services, where teleoperators can continuously monitor and conduct decision-making based on different rules and alerts previously configured. For example, if from within a time frame, data from the bed sensor is not received, then an alert can be generated and the teleoperator can start its protocol and contact the agent to see if it's well or not. What is the main problem in terms of security on this use case? Well, in this use case, especially a lot of sensitive data is processed, such, for example, the activity that is happening in the specific user home. So if we, for example, there is a malicious action to access to this personal information, an attacker, for example, could use it to track the end user, from the data collected, for example, from the motion sensor, and see if the end user is at home or not to conduct any malicious actions. Therefore, in the same approach and the other use cases, data security and integrity is also one of the issues for the scalability of this solution. Regarding the main MSEC benefit, part of all the security from the data streaming from the different layers, MSEC provides and goes a little bit beyond compliance of GDPR by adding different security measures to prevent external attacks that may lead erroneous actions, for example, from the teleoperator sides. So MSEC provides a parallel encrypt system for all the data collected and storage, and all this data encrypted, well, from this data encrypted, a hash is generated, and it's actually connected to the blockchain where it is stored in order to ensure at any time that data collected has not been modified by anyone. So this is the main, let's say, MSEC benefit of MSEC innovation on this use case, this connection between off-chain and on-chain work with sensitive data stored in encrypted database, but also connected to the blockchain for this data tamper-proof. If we go to the next use case, which is implemented actually in Fujisawa, this use case called Secure and Trustworthy Mobile Sensing Platform provides, in a similar way to the first use case, the one of the environmental sensors in Santander, this use case also provides an application that allows urban environment monitoring to visualize spatially and temporally dense environmental data. In this scenario, as explained also by my colleague Aamir, an automotive sensing platform is used to generate real-time environmental sensor data streams for all over the city of Fujisawa, leveraging also 100 mobile sensing trucks. Data is collected through different ways, from garbage trucks with sensors that can obtain data about air quality, temperature, humidity, driving, also recording videos, garbage disposal amount, ampere road marks in the infrastructure, but also data collected comes from government employees, for example, photos of illegal disposal, graffitis, animal bodies found on the roads, and also data collected from different websites like weather, traffic, parking, and so on. So the main problem overview of this use case is that, of course, the heterogeneity of data from the city collected, but also the privacy protection and security assurance mechanisms are also indispensable on this use case to provide reliable data that can be used for effective decisions by the government. So the MSEC benefit on this use case It's that we provide a practical distribute and federate infrastructure for IoT sensor data, sharing among various users and organizations in a way that is scalable, it's extensible, and it's easy to use and secure while preserving the privacy. In addition, for instance, for example, when we record videos from these garbage trucks on the road, a component is used which is called anonymizer, developed also the frame of MSEC, which can automatically delete privacy information from images such as camera image handled by the Smart City platform. Furthermore, in order to protect vulnerability on IoT devices from malicious activities, this use case also use defense in deep mechanisms and threat monitoring, as explained by my colleague Aamir, and therefore we provide this multi-layered security against any policy violations or cyber attacks, and along with the security health checks continually monitored. So if we go to the next slide, we go to use case 4, which is the cross-border use cases implemented at the same time in Fujisawa and Santander. This use case provides an application, as you can see on the right side, where different citizens from both cities, Santander and Fujisawa, can exchange pictures according to a specific themes created for the purpose. For example, city sports, gastronomy, and so on. And at the same time, while taking this picture, for instance, for example, from the landscape of the city, it's possible to take a front picture from the front camera of the smartphone that calculates automatically an score regarding your facial expression that the user has when reacting to the landscape that is seen. The main problem of this use case, of course, is the exchange of personal data that can contain this image. For example, taking a picture to the beach, it could contain image of other people that is in the same spot at that moment. So in this use case, we also use anonymizer to automatically delete any personal data that contains that image. Anonymizer is mainly based on artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies that allows actually to delete this personal information and provide a picture totally empty and clear. So finally, if we go to the final use case, which is the marketplace, Smart City Data Marketplace with secure multi-layer technologies. We see more and more that as smart cities evolve with new IoT applications, actually the amount of data collected is higher and higher. However, without the free flow of all the data collected in smart city IoT applications, there cannot be cross-collaboration between companies or citizens or governmental bodies and entrepreneurs. In this past year, it's true that many cities have been already working on open data frameworks. However, these are powerful initiatives, but they can be supercharged when combined with decentralized technologies. Making data exchange decentralized unleash a wave of permissionless services and business model innovations that isn't possible when a single company or administration controls the network. So the value of a smart city will only be realized when data from different distributed sensors is available to digital citizens and business in a user-friendly way through a decentralized smart city data marketplace portal. On MSEC, actually, we provide this decentralized marketplace where market participants are able to exchange data and value. Our marketplace, as explained by Antonis, enables different features that goes beyond the blockchain, such as the use of MSEC tokens and smart contracts. And one of the main problems in terms of security of this use case, it's also related with handling sorts of data that can include personal data and needs to be prevented also from falsification and be treated in a secure environment. And also needs to avoid attacks to the blockchain and the current marketplace deployed. So our solution allows to exchange information through the use of virtual currencies, allowing real-time matching of supply and demand in a secure and decentralized way. Actually, the marketplace uses a trust and reputation model that enhances security and makes possible to evaluate, for example, from the buyer, the content purchased, and thus it can ensure this trustworthiness of the several actors participating in these exchanges of or sharing of information. So this is mainly a brief overview of the different use cases. Of course, you have also a specific webinar where more detail each of the use cases is explained, and you can find this in our website. So I hope this has been helpful to have a little bit of context on how we apply different smart cities and we validate our infrastructure in a real scenario. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. So before we go to the final conclusions, some questions have been popping up here in our Q&A function. So perhaps I will start with a question to all speakers. So we have here one participant asking who are the project partners, and then if they can test the MSEC platform in the Bursa city, and also if there are any use cases options for municipalities. So 3 questions in one. Perhaps Vanessa, you are the one with the most knowledge to answer all these 3, but Antonis and Aamir, feel free to also jump in if you want to answer as well.
Thank you, Nadine. So to the first question regarding who are the project partners and if it's possible to test it in the platform in Bursa City, project partners is the consortium is made from 12 different partners, 6 European partners and 6 Japanese partners. There are different mix of types of organizations that we compose the consortium. We have big companies, technological companies, but also we have research institution centers. We also have universities, and we have also a municipality joined the project, which is Santander municipality. And so in terms of testing the platform in Bursa City, of course, most of the components that we are developing within the MSEC project frame will be available in open source. So this is something that we are working on this, let's say, last year of the project to make available all the outcomes that we have developed within the project for all the stakeholders that are interested on our results. So hopefully in the upcoming months, you can find our infrastructure with those components that are open source with the license published by the different partners that compose the consortium in order to test it. Okay, so there was a second question about if we can...
Yes, it was actually a third question on any use case options for municipalities, but I'm guessing that this was before your presentation, Vanessa, in which all use cases are actually for the municipalities. But don't know if you want to answer a little bit more about this. Nevertheless, what I can say to Aamir, which was the one posing all these 3 questions, is that you can check the project website, like my colleague Antonis has just written here in the Q&A function, but you can also send us an email after our follow-up email, and then we can get in touch and see how we can move forward with the replication, for instance, of some of our use cases in Bursa City, which is in Turkey. So yes, please feel free to reach us out to see how we can cooperate and replicate the MSEC solution in your city and for your specific municipality, Aamir. Okay, so now we have here another question, and Aamir, I think that you would like to answer to this particular question, right? It's really
yes.
data.
So the question is that if a user need to send a sensitive data from their own platform to their client, how can they protect this data to avoid security incident? And he would like to know more about, not only just the text, but also to protect the process or to send the information. So based on our experience and based on addressing this kind of challenges several times. So there are two aspects. One is that I always tell to all of my friends is that security is not just the device itself. Security is not on the components itself. The security should be across people, process, and technology. So in this webinar, we covered the technology perspectives, but at the same time, from security point of view, we need to make sure that we have the policies, right policies, the user awareness and training. The best way to encrypt any sensitive information, the best way to protect any sensitive information is to encrypt. And encryption is done right at the source. For example, if I want to send a sensitive document, before the document leaves my computer, I should have a software from my IT team that allows me to encrypt it based on the company policy. And I should be following the process. The information security team or the IT team of that organization should have policies and processes outlined from security practice point of view to make sure that not only the data is encrypted from the source, but also the process to encrypt it is understood and is the same across all the organization, and also to protect the keys and other stuff. So security, in simple words, security is not only just devices, but security is people, process, and technology. Does that answer your question? Okay, so I think that addressed their answer. Any other questions? All right. Back to you, Nadine. I think you are muted.
We cannot hear you, Nadine. Yes.
Thank you so much, Aamir. Yes, so I think that we have no further questions. So everything was clear and all answers have been given. So I would now move forward to our conclusions part. So I invite you, Antonis, Vanessa, and Aamir, to provide a short conclusion, just to briefly summarize today's webinar. Perhaps we can start with Vanessa, with the ladies.
Thank you, Nadine. So in overall, well, our end-to-end, let's say, framework, it doesn't come actually from just 2 months of work. It's important to highlight all the research analysis that we have conducted in the past 2 years and a half. All this information can be found in the MSEC website, where you will find different deliverables where we analyze the needs of the stakeholders, the risk and the threats in current smart city applications. And from there, we have defined the different use cases to test the infrastructure, but also we have defined the needs and the basis to develop our MSEC framework to provide the security end-to-end. So it's important that if we want to have success and adoption and scalability of the different smart city applications that can provide a really high value to citizens, it's important to take deep attention on providing this security, reliability, integrity, and confidentiality of the solution that users feel comfortable using these applications, and that they see that there is a value added on these smart city applications.
Thank you, Vanessa. Perhaps Antonis, you would like to take the floor for some final words?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like also to thank all the attendants for being part of this presentation. So definitely security in Internet of Things, in smart cities is not a very trivial and easy to solve thing. As we have seen, complex architectures, many parameters that we have to take into consideration. And of course, you can never be sure that you have a secure system, especially when we are talking about this kind of large scale, extensive infrastructures, which, imply a lot of different heterogeneous security requirements. But today we have also technologies, we have some best practices and know-how from different projects. Also, these knowledge transfer techniques are working properly. We can devise solutions which can at least increase the security features of this kind of large-scale smart city infrastructure. So to that end, it's a very promising area. It's a very interesting area, and there are research topics and technologies which are worth further investigating. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Antonis. And now back to you, Aamir.
Thank you, Antonis and Nadine and Vanessa. Also, I would like to thank all the participants for their time. The only takeaway I would like you all to have is to just think that security is an enabler. It should not be stopping you from doing what you need to do to produce results for your company or for your projects. In fact, security should allow you to do those with a peace of mind. And with that in mind, we have provided and designed the security features in MSEC as an example where you can actually leverage them and you can utilize either you already have systems on top of them or you want to create new systems. So at the end, again, the end-to-end security, the only way you can have security would be to have as many layers of security as possible, because there is no single 100% secure solution available. Thank you again for your time. That's all from me.
Thank you so much,
stay well.
Aamir, Vanessa, and Antonis, for your time here today in our webinar. Please feel free to reach us out if you have any more questions. If you want to engage with us, for instance, to replicate our use cases or learn more about the MSEC solution for your own city, for your own municipality, or for your own company, or even if you are just an interested citizen, we are here to give you all the information regarding how to bring cyber security into hyper-connected smart cities. So reach us out either through our official email, hello@msecproject.eu, or you can join our Slack community and engage directly with us and also with our researchers from the EU and Japanese side. Just to say that we will be sending you a follow-up email containing all this information. So the video recording, today's presentation with all these links, and also with a couple of more interesting information for you, such as the survey that we did in the beginning of this webinar. And you can also follow us in our social media channels that you see here in the PowerPoint. So keeping the momentum. So I would like to thank all of you for participating, and I wish you a great day or evening if you happen to be on the Japanese side. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.